Welcome back to Gems Uncut. I'm Heather.
And I'm Molly. Let's cut it up. So today's episode, things I wish I knew in my 20s. I think this is going to be very
Fun.
vulnerable. Yes, as someone that just exited the 20s, as Heather.
No, I think I'm 29 forever. Isn't that how that works?
You know what? I still think I feel 18 at heart sometimes. So yeah, we'll just tell ourselves that. So.
Oh yeah, no, just a couple weeks past the big 3 and I've never felt more like 21.
We love it. So I think really like 20s are really like the full of the first moments. And not to say all of these things can happen just in the 20s. Some of us have these experiences later. But when I think back to when I turned 20, I'm like, oh my gosh, that was a decade, you know, like it's a full decade. I mean,
right. Of finding yourself.
Yeah.
Really.
I was in college when I turned 20.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty nuts. But when you think about what did you accomplish and do in your 20s, I think a lot of firsts are like first job, first really big mistake. I think, and that could span so many different categories.
Right.
First apartment, first home, maybe first serious relationship, first car you bought on your own. All of these moments, I mean, there's so many more, but
Right.
things that we can learn from. But one of those first in there is not typically the money management. We're just winging it.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, not at all. We're thinking about having fun, experiences, and especially when you get that first job and it's like, holy cow, I have money. Holy cow, how much do they take out in taxes? That's ridiculous. You know, just like boom, life hits you and it hits you quick. And you're just trying to live, honestly, year by year. You get a little bit more, well, you should get a little bit more wise. Doesn't happen for all of us, but I think jumping into like our first segment here is the biggest misconception of our 20s is we have time.
Ooh, time, yeah. Time's on our side when we're 20. We've got
Invincible.
We're forever young and we've got forever time, and that's simply not true.
You know, I think that if I could sit my 22-year-old self down with a glass of wine and a spreadsheet, I would tell her that you only have time if you use it.
Oh, that's deep.
Yeah.
Because that's something I think we hear all the time in our profession, not in our profession, is that, oh, I have time. Time's on my side. Well, yeah, if you do, but
Are
if
you using it?
you're not using it. I mean, that's
Right.
such a good point. I have time to go work out and train for that 5K or whatever. But if you're not actually putting in the effort and the time to training for that, you're not going to get there.
Right.
It's the same thing with your money goals. I think something that I would tell my 22-year-old self is a lot of the basic podcast episodes that we've had so far. Like, I would tell myself a lot of those basic little things. Start saving for retirement. Start saving somewhere.
Right.
Start saving for those future things, even if you don't know what they are.
Right.
And honestly, something I don't recall myself, but how I advise some young recent graduates just starting in their first career is like that first paycheck is the biggest paycheck you're ever going to get. Quite literally, it's usually the smallest. But considering most people go from making nothing or, you know, pretty bare minimum because maybe they were paying their way through school or whatnot. But that first real job, it's like the biggest paycheck you're ever going to get.
Yeah.
So it's like, let's start being purposeful that first check.
Yeah.
If we start, you know, saving for retirement, that 10% that is typically recommended,
Right.
you won't ever feel like you're missing it because you never had it to begin with.
Absolutely.
So really just starting at those little things.
Yeah. Man, it would be so hard to like you get used to a lifestyle, or I know we have had conversations with people in their 20s who they already started to learn a certain lifestyle and they're spending everything in their paycheck, whether it's I'm getting my nails done, I'm buying all the premium food, I'm, you know, shopping at
Yeah.
these stores that I mean, you're just paying for a premium on everything, but you're using your whole paycheck. You're living good. And, you know, we're not doing the back end stuff. I think you always say this, and I love it so much. It's like people always want to talk about the things that they have, the cars, the products, just everything that they have, but they never want to talk about how much they have in their bank account.
Right. I mean, it's so taboo to talk about a lot of those things. And I think for us, it seems really normal. And I know I've asked people out of context, like out of profession, questions like that. And they're like, why are you asking me that? We don't talk about that. I'm like, I kind of forget,
Yeah.
but yeah, we don't talk about that. So we don't know what's normal, whether you have millions in the bank, $1 in the bank, like
Right.
we don't talk about it. So we don't know what's normal. So I think it's okay to have conversations as long as we're uplifting and like trying to better each other. But
That's
go ahead.
No, that's the perfect segue into, something in my 20s that I noticed from myself. And actually, I think I was told this even early in my career. And I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And I'll get vulnerable here in a minute and discuss, why it actually doesn't make sense. But the whole concept of fake it till you make it,
Mhm.
you see that everywhere. And what it's actually doing is bigging people these massive stress holes because likely they're putting things on credit cards so that they can either have the car that they should look like they should have at this age to look successful or whatever the case may be. And they're doing these things, putting themselves in a hole because they don't actually have the money, nor are they saving in the right buckets for their future selves.
Yeah, and I think social media has a lot to blame with that as
It
well.
it does.
I think it's so easy, especially with like influencers out there. It's like, man, everyone has um, a nice car or a nice apartment, a nice house, nice clothes, nice these things. I mean, you don't really know, but I know what you're putting out there,
Right.
and it makes certain people feel insecure. I remember having a conversation with somebody, and they were like, "So and so's rich," and I was like, "What? What does that mean? How do you know
Yeah.
this?" And they're like, "Well, they drive a nice car, they have a nice house," or whatever it is. You and I both know that just because you have nice things doesn't mean you've got lots of money in the bank
Right.
if you're spending it all. And you're using your credit cards to help with that extra income or lifestyle creep with that income increase. It's like you really are trying to spend to belong, but you really don't need to do that.
Transitioning into my 30s has been, man, such a growth curve that I'm so thankful for. And this is where the vulnerability will come into play. But being your authentic self and not conforming to everything you see has been nothing short of life changing for me
Mhm.
to really understand because um due to some childhood trauma of mine, I have always actually thought that, like, if you have money and you buy things for people or you do things for people that cost money, you can build friendships that way. And that is not true. People do
Mm.
not value you for your money. They value you for who you are. I've had a tough road of getting that through my head that someone should value you for who you are and not for the money. And, whether it was faking it till you make it or quite literally just bending over backwards in a monetary aspect so that you could either impress people or just give to people so that they like you, to my 20-year-old self and to anybody else who may struggle with just thinking that money is going to give them more value with amongst their friends or amongst anything else, is quite literally stop conforming, stop trying to prove yourself to people, be your authentic self, and it's going to surround you with the real authentic people that are meant to be in your life.
Absolutely. So that makes me think your love language, number one, has to be like gift giving or up at the top somewhere.
It is. My mother definitely passed that down to me. I love being thoughtful and seeing the expression or surprise or joy that giving something to someone does.
Yeah,
Uh, I've always been that way. I do think there is a place for that
absolutely.
because it's so great to be thoughtful, think of someone and do something nice. But the dollar sign behind that does not have to be large or anything for it to come across as a kind, thoughtful gesture.
Right, right. And at the end of the day, it's kind of like, well, if you want to do that, then you just got to budget it in, right?
Yeah.
So don't go crazy and,
Right.
whatnot. But
And in this time frame too, like in your 20s, and it definitely creeps into your 30s. Well, even more in your 30s because of babies and your friends having kids.
yeah.
But you think of all the weddings you have to go to. I say have because it's like I can't miss that. But and then your friends start having babies and
Mm-hmm.
all the gifts that you have to buy. It's like we actually need a budget line for gifting,
Right, right.
whenever it does come to budgeting,
Yeah.
because, you might feel obligated to gift something really expensive, but your finances don't match that.
Right, right.
That's a really tough, like, look in the mirror, because if I send my friend a $50 gift card to something versus buy them something on the wedding registry for $200, it's like, "Oh, no, how are they gonna look at me?" Blah, blah, blah. It's like, you gotta do what you can do, and if the people are not gonna value you for just being their friend and doing your best, that's not your people.
Yeah, those are good points, and as someone that's been married, had a wedding before, it's like I have so many thoughts. I feel like that could be a whole nother podcast
Yeah.
of just, like, planning for a wedding and, being a guest at it and all that. Because having a wedding and being guests at many weddings, I feel like has almost changed my opinions as I went through my 20s and now I'm in my 30s.
Right.
Like, it's just interesting how I viewed it at that point versus now. At the end of the day, like, totally, you gotta be real at the same
Mhm.
time, but also, like, don't feel like I have to go to every single wedding. I know as someone that, again, has gotten married, I would have loved for every single person to be at my wedding, but realistically, it just can't always work out, whether you gotta travel. I mean, sometimes traveling just to go to the wedding is super expensive, but, like, we know that. Like,
Right.
especially if I knew I was inviting someone that's completely in a whole 'nother state and I was getting married in a remote part of Texas, okay, now you gotta fly here, you gotta drive, spend a hotel, like,
Yeah.
it makes sense, like, all of those things add up,
Right.
but, I think you just bring up a really good point, and I really appreciate that, and I thank you for being vulnerable.
Hey,
Um,
that's what we're here for. We're
yeah,
here to be real.
yeah. I wanna go back to the "I have time" because I feel like we were talking about it, but, like, we
Right.
didn't even talk about the magic of compounding interest, which is
Mm,
truly what time is.
absolutely.
Do you wanna add on compounding interest and
Yeah,
what
I
that is?
mean, so, just think about it as if, whenever you're in your early 20s and we start throwing money in an account, or better yet, let's think about it as a snowball at the top of a mountain. And if you start a very small snowball at the top and you start to roll it down the mountain, it is going to gather snow, and then it's going to continue to get bigger and bigger as
Mhm.
it gets down the mountain. And you can think about that in many different ways, relating it to money, relating it to any goal that you have. You got to start small and it will get bigger as long as you stay consistent. Now, on top of that snowball compounding, something else that you can do is dollar cost averaging. And so, in simplest forms, if we're going to go back to the snowball, is, let's say you're standing on the side of the mountain with the snowball, running with it down the hill, and you are throwing more snow onto that snowball. It's going to be even bigger than if it was just rolling down the hill by itself.
Yeah.
So not only are we starting small somewhere very, very early, we're at the tip top of the mountain, not a quarter of the way down as if we were starting in our 30s, and we're throwing more snow onto the snowball. That is, you can do something substantial, but not stressful
Yeah.
if you start early.
And if you are doing the pushing down the snowball and throwing snow at it for, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, which snowball is going to be the biggest? It's going to be the one that you had the most time doing it. So it's like, I think we might have talked about this in a previous episode, but it's like, I think a big goal I know growing up was like, I want to be a millionaire.
Mm.
And it's like, when you break down the math to be a millionaire, if you start saving and investing, in your 20s,
Yeah.
really doesn't it's not that hard to become a millionaire.
No, it's not. I
You
wish
just have
more
to
people knew that.
yeah, you just have to start saving and you have to have time. Of course, if you start at, you know, 10, 15, 20, 30 years later,
Right.
it's gonna be a lot harder to become a millionaire
It is. It
because you gotta
is.
save more money just to get there. So
Some of the most rewarding conversations that we have with young people are, they're not even to their 30s yet, and they've got such a nest egg built up that they're like, guys, thank you so much for helping us. This is the most money anybody in our family has ever had.
mhm,
And it's
yes.
quite literally just because they started as soon as possible, and they did not start living out of their means. They cut out a chunk of what they currently had and really put it towards what their goals were. It was small. It really wasn't substantial. It was just, oh, you know what? I can miss $100 or something a
Right,
month.
right, and
You don't even
it's
think about it.
right, and it's so much easier in your 20s. I know, again, everyone's journey's different, but, like, I didn't have for a majority of my 20s, I didn't have a house, I didn't have kids in my 20s, and it's like, wow, you have the least amount of responsibilities in your 20s
Mhm.
comparatively to 30s and 40s. That's do as much as you can sooner, because eventually we might have to lighten up on how much we can put away just because responsibilities go up. So
Mhm.
it's like the more you can do in your 20s, the better you're setting yourself up to be. And you kind of said nest egg, which kind of brings up emergency funds. Emergency funds aren't sexy to talk about.
Mm.
They're not attractive. No one likes to see money necessarily sitting on the sideline doing nothing. Some people do, of course, but there's a balance of what we need there. And it's just not talked about enough. But you know what is talked about more and what is sexy and attractive? Peace of mind.
Oh, yeah.
Peace of mind. Nothing's more powerful than knowing, like, you know what? I've got my investments. I got my emergency fund. Like, I might feel broke, but shoot, I've got all this money over here that, like, I do actually, I'm not actually broke.
Right.
It's just maybe not right there in my checking account.
Mhm.
And so it's really just like when life throws you those curveballs, you have the power to walk away or do something about it. So whether it's job loss, a breakup, flat tires,
Mm.
any of those like firsts that happen that turn out to be something terrible happened, you've got a cushion. That financial or the emergency fund is financial independence, or the investments can help
Yeah.
with that peace of mind. I guess really not financial independence, it's the independence fund to know that okay, I'm not just I can walk away from work. I don't
Right.
have to like now walk to work because my car broke down. So,
I would say in your 20s, it's never a one size fits all, and no one ever has the same walk of life or
mhm.
experience whenever it comes to money. But if we weren't in this industry, who knows where we would be, truthfully? We don't have a crystal ball. We would not know. Can't go back in time. But I do know that when you're in your 20s, just by trying to help people in that age range, the most common response was, "Oh, I don't need to start that right now. I
Yeah,
have time." You know, just really feeling like you can't ask for help because you're not rich yet or because you're not at a certain level yet. You think you aren't qualified in your 20s. And I think that is another just misconception is you don't have to be rich to seek guidance to start somewhere. Our favorite term of people whenever someone's like, "Oh, like what are your ideal clients?" We've got some different ideal clients, but one of our favorite ones to explain is a Henry. It's your high earners, not rich yet. It's those people that are getting out of college that really want to set the foundation to be able to grow and to be able to do something for their future selves. And obviously they're not there yet. They probably have so much student debt that when they come to us, their number one goal is to get out of debt. And we love telling people, hey, the richest people in the world have quite a bit of debt. And it's a path that we really love to break down to those people, especially the ones that we can get right before they start living a doctor's lifestyle
sure.
or, whatever the career may be. You just got to start somewhere and you got to lay that foundation really tight.
Absolutely. And if you're listening to this and you're not in your 20s and you're in your 30s or later, like the sooner you start like these basic things, the better. So at
Yep.
the end of the day, I would tell those people like they need to meet with a professional, a CFP, us,
Yeah.
just to better map out like what could I be doing. But at the end of the day, like we just have to start. And we
Hmm.
should have started yesterday, but we can't change yesterday and we can
Right.
change today and moving forward.
So let's get a financial plan. Let's get that peace of mind. And at the end of the day, give yourself grace. Stay consistent because
Every gem
everything
starts
starts
uncut.
uncut.